The recording. And welcome everybody to another webinar with Jane Landscapes USA. And I just wanted to say thank you for joining us. I'm Richard Restuccia, Vice President of Water Management Solutions at Jane Irrigation. And we have a tremendous panel conversation for you today. And when I think about the landscape maintenance business, I think about a multi-billion-dollar business that people are spending on every year, whether it be a professional building or homeowners association. And we have landscape contractors servicing all this business. And what it creates is a very interesting dynamic between the landscape contractor, the property managers, as well as the building owners or HOAs. So today's panel has a lot of experience in this area, and what they're going to be doing for us today is helping us step through what is somewhat sometimes tenuous relationships and share with us their experience for being so successful in managing these relationships. It's really been the secret to their success of what they've done. And if we're able to share it with all of you, we were talking before how much that's going to mean to us and make us happy. So first of all, I wanted to introduce Stacey Sturnot. She is somebody I worked with at Valleycrest for many years. She is the operations manager, executive operations manager for Landscapes USA now. And Stacey, I just want to mention that when she was at Valleycrest, she managed a branch, and one of the branches that she managed had one account that was worth over $2 million a year. And we call this a branch maker. So when these re-ups for the contracts would come, it was a really stressful time, because not only did you have to win that business originally, you had to keep it by doing good service and really working well with your customer. And if you lost that account, it really meant hundreds of jobs going away from the company. So families losing their income, and it was very stressful. I know a lot of us didn't sleep for a few months, but Stacey was always really calm, a great leader, and I appreciated that from her. And the time we were there, I know we got the renewal every year. So I also know she's an instructor for yoga, and maybe it's that yoga that keeps that peace of mind, but you showed really great leadership there, and I appreciated it.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that.
So welcome, Stacey. Next, I wanted to introduce Nicole Hill. And Nicole Hill is the Director of Landscape Operations at the Irvine company. Nicole is also an ex-Valleycrest person that I worked with. She managed properties while her team and she managed the branch that managed some beautiful properties up in Orange County, some of the best managed and beautiful properties I've ever seen across the United States. The other thing that I was always interested in with Nicole was she was an arborist manager at Disneyland. Now, I think about Disneyland, right? The happiest place on earth, but also immaculately landscaped. And people are there all, from early morning till past 12 o'clock, right? Past the fireworks. So when do you get all this done? She's managing people, managing landscape from 1 in the morning till early in the morning. It's really a added degree of difficulty to what she was doing. She did a great job with that. And then you see she's moved along in her career very well. So welcome, Nicole. Thanks for joining us today. And it's great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and then also joining us today is Tracy Wankner. Tracy is a landscape architect. She graduated in landscape architecture from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Go Mustangs. We're really happy to have her here today. She's managing properties in the San Diego area. But what's interesting is you get somebody with the experience of landscape architecture in their background, somebody who understands water management and knows water. It creates a better dynamic and a really good dynamic in working with all the partners. So it's going to be really interesting to hear from her today and get her advice and her insight on how to manage properties better as we all go forward. And then last but not least is Corrine Crawford. She's been a property manager, or at least been in the property management business for over 20 years. She is the Director of New Business Development at Powerstone Property Management up in the Orange County area, but they manage properties in Orange County and in San Diego. One thing I know about Corrine is she was also Speaker of the Year with Community Association International a few years ago. So it's nice to have that type of experience and background in education. And that's really what she was doing when she was doing a lot of the speaking, was educating other property managers of how to interact better with customers, and both on the upside and the downside, right? And I say that because property managers often get squeezed between the owners of the property and the homeowners, and then between the landscapers too. So it's a really tough situation, tough to be in. But listen, I wouldn't be doing my job in water management if I didn't start this off talking about irrigation. And so I want to give this first question to Stacey, and I want to ask you, Stacey, what are your day-to-day responsibilities involving landscaping and irrigation right now?
So day to day, it's overseeing general operations. As far as irrigation, it's managing and approving some of the estimates are going out. That means being able to get competitive bids and estimating on the parts that we're using. Also make sure that we're managing our irrigation department and the technicians that we have. A lot of it is quality control of the irrigation, and then also working with our irrigation manager to qualify through any rebates and any other processes that we're going through with either current or prospective clients.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so go on, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, a lot of that is just day-to-day, quality control, I think, is the most part. Making sure, that we use quality material is really the best, but making sure that our technicians and our irrigation managers are qualified and constantly trained. I think that's the biggest thing, because the technology is changing, as you know, as everybody knows, I think, with not just with irrigation, and staying on top of that and staying trained is very important for the team to keep us ahead of the game.
Yeah, so with that, Stacey, how important do you think that is to the homeowners or the building owners when it comes to selecting and working with a landscape contractor?
It varies depending on whether it be commercial or HOA. I think it varies also on the education. So part of our job is to hopefully properly educate the management and our homeowner association boards into what that does mean. Again, we're coming through a time where technology isn't always looked upon as what they want to move forward with, especially if in HOA circumstances where there's not a large budget for it. So it's really about doing most of the education and having a good working relationship with that property manager to do so. We've had board meetings and other prospective proposals where we bring in, our vendors like Jane or ET Water to help explain what it means. And then hopefully if there's not an interest now or not a budget for it now, we work with them to plan so that in the next few years there is one.
Yeah, well, that sounds great, right? A little guidance along with day-to-day management. That's really appreciated, I'm sure. So Tracy, what about you as a property manager, having a lot of day-to-day management responsibilities for multiple properties? What's your involvement with landscaping and irrigation?
I feel like my main response is yes, please fix it. So yeah, I would say managing the resource. So a lot of what I look at is what I'm paying in water bills, and I try to get a consistent average that I can expect to see each month. That helps me know when there's an irrigation leak, which is a different kind of quality control or auditing, either that or property drive-throughs, seeing the effects that excess water might have on asphalt, overspray, things like that. So just kind of dialing in like my knowing of how a landscape irrigation should operate, and then kind of challenging the landscape maintenance in that way. I would say the hardest thing is just like Stacey was talking about, is updating the system. So how we had a hermit crab system, like a smart system, but it was not in the right geographic location to ping to the weather station. So it was completely useless. So when we changed landscape vendors on that property, it had no value. And it's one of those things where I think that makes it really hard when you're going out to bid, and you tend to go towards low bid, because I do a lot of association management. So commercial association, not homeowners. So the landscape is kind of auxiliary. It's not the biggest priority. The trees get in the way of the signs, or the bushes get in the way of the walkway to the entrance, less than it's like the most beautiful thing ever. So very different than my training in landscape design. But yeah, I guess it's just kind of maintaining that balance of budget so much of the time.
Yeah.
I can speak to, as the only panelist without any landscape or landscape architect design background here at all, I can honestly say my goal doing community association management is to have as little possible on a day-to-day basis to do with landscaping and irrigation. But invariably, as most people said, the landscaping line item in a budget is usually one of the highest, and it actually is also one of the most visible in regards to maintenance for the average homeowner. They notice everything from, I don't like the plant material, to a dead plant, and then that generates the call to property management, which almost 100% of the time, as Tracy mentioned, generates the call to the landscaper of please fix this. So it's kind of a pass through on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, if I can manage to have as little to do on a day-to-day basis with landscaping and irrigation, that's probably a good day for me.
Yeah, interesting. So Tracy, going back to what you said, it's many HOAs or many professional, commercial buildings, they budgeted for an irrigation system to start with, but they don't accrue every year for a repair or improvement, right? And I'm wondering, are you starting to see this change? Is anybody starting to accrue dollars for improvements later on?
Well, it's just interesting. It's like if you can handle it in the operating budget, then you're not increasing a reserve collection. A reserve collection is specifically for items that enhance your capital improvement. So you could use it for controllers and big ticket items, but when it comes to, say, changing out all the heads to be more water efficient, or changing out the pressure regulators, it becomes a little bit, commercial associations are a little bit different. If I get the board to approve reserve expenditure and I get it documented in the minutes, then it can be very effective way of getting to spend those reserves, which are sort of more of a lump of money. But it's hard in that fashion, but it doesn't really qualify. When you get a reserve study historically, it might have included the controllers, but not your system. I've got one property with a lot of galvanized piping, for example. And as the galvanized piping goes, I mean, it's $1,000 here, $1,000 there. And it's a very, I've tried to upfront track it so I can create the expectation of what that money, what's coming. But when I present that to a board of directors, they don't get it. They think I'm not making up things, but I'm worried too much about like the fringe. And I'm looking at it going, oh man, we've got thousands of feet of galvanized piping. This is going to add up fast. And if I'm supposed to justify the expense, I want to know it in advance of having a problem. And that's usually where I attack the landscape part. A little different than what you're talking about, Corrine.
Yeah, so Corrine, you were saying that, hearing from them the least is really good, right? So for you, if you're doing a visual or a spot check of a property, then if it looks good, you're happy.
Well, that actually, I think that's going back to about what all the ladies were saying, is the education and the right level of education between your landscaper, the landscape contractor and the property manager. Is if the property manager knows nothing, they aren't going to know what to look for. But if they want to rely on their contractor to be the expert. So it's that kind of fine line of knowing enough to know what to look for to make sure that you're keeping the value of the property and not overspending on repairs, or to notice things that come up before they're a huge problem, as Tracy was saying. But I'm very well aware of the fact that I am not an expert in landscaping or irrigation. And so that relationship with the landscape contractor is so important. And it's really important that they know that line to follow, as far as how much do I educate the property manager without overburdening, kind of that Goldilocks effect. You tell me too much and I'm going to go, I don't need to know this. I do a different job. You don't tell me enough and I'm not going to be able to do my job as a property manager. So I think, yes, I was somewhat joking, but also honest about if I don't care about landscaping in one day, it's a good thing. But I do need to have that relationship with the landscape contractor to make sure I'm, on that track of where my role comes in.
Yeah.
Corrine, oh, I was just going to say to Corrine, one role I served, which was kind of a weird niche, is that I was doing landscape inspection for the County of San Diego, installing new construction on the side of roadway. I wasn't myself installing it, but I was enforcing that the plans in the contract get executed. So watching the digging of the hole and if the fertilizer is going in and how the irrigation's laid out. But what that translated to was a friend of mine who was on a board of directors for a homeowners association who was completely frustrated with her landscape team because they also had an internal arborist and tree care. And they were recommending the removal of a bunch of trees, the removal of these different things because of pests and diseases. And there wasn't a lot of trust because the previous board hadn't managed their landscaper very well, and it was unique. So she said, can you please start coming to our landscape walks? The board, I interviewed with the board, and so the board paid me as a consultant, but I walked with the homeowners association board, the landscape foreman or account rep, and then usually one of the on-site foremans. And it was a really weird position because I was meant to do what you're talking about, kind of bridge that gap and say, okay, well, I hear what this homeowner is talking about and they don't like the size of the leaves. But I also hear what the landscape manager is saying, and that the smaller the leaves, the lower water it is. And we all collectively want to have less water. So this particular plant with this particular irrigation set up is actually what you both want. And so I would have to just kind of bridge that gap. And it was really interesting because I don't know if it was, I helped them also make some plant selections for plants that were dying that needed to get overhauled. So I think it was helpful in that capacity, but that bridging that gap of communication has been really crazy. And homeowners are way more intense about what their front entry looks like, what their approach to their door, if their tree berry falls. I mean, it's a lot to manage. I don't have to deal with that.
Well, and if I may add to that too, I mean, that's what our job is supposed to be every day, right? You as property managers are worried about not just landscape, right? Whether you're educated or not, there's asphalt, parking lots, roofs, building, your tenants, all of that. And so we're supposed to make your job easier and not have to make you worry about landscape. And so as long as we're educated and educating what you need to know and not taking your time, I feel is the most important. And that's why that relationship is so important.
Yeah,
Totally agree.
It is, right? It's really about relationships. So Nicole, I'm interested to know your landscaping responsibilities and irrigation responsibilities, but I'm also interested in hearing about your experience now that you've been on both sides.
I think Tracy just described my job, where I'm kind of in this really niche position. So I have a team of 6 plus myself, and we're embedded in a real estate company as a support system to our operations managers or our property managers. So we're the landscape experts working on behalf of the owner to help our property managers manage just our massive amounts of landscape and irrigation. And so we are kind of we definitely see ourselves as a support role to our property managers, but it's also a really unique position because we have one owner who is very, very passionate about landscape. Thank goodness, because that's how I got this great gig. But it's really a unique and special place to be, where we do have a lot of the traditional responsibilities. They have a property manager where we're kind of budgeting and managing the landscape and irrigation. But we also have a really nice ad that our company really is interested in technology and advancement and creativity and efficiencies. And so there's this small part of our role where we actually do have the time to kind of educate and learn and innovate. And that's something that was really hard to find when I was on the commercial landscape side, because our days are so impacted with running a business, right? When you're running a branch, you're really running a small business. There's a ton of different hats you wear during the day. And I would say that probably the biggest benefit to my role now is that I have that little bit of slice of time to research and innovate and work on our communication and long-term plan 5 years out what our irrigation systems are going to look like. So I think that's a really cool, unique thing about my team. So.
Yeah.
Oh, and to riff off that, I would say my role at Worth Property Management, fortunately or unfortunately, has helped our association stay with low bid landscape companies because, Stacey, to your point, I end up stepping in with more guidance, and then they're like, oh, okay, well, the landscape company is doing a fine job, but every time I'm going, why doesn't anybody know but me?
Right.
And I'm not saying that blanket statement for all of the vendors that we work for, because most of them are really on it. But in some instances, I don't know if my background actually hurts me in terms of getting all the things done. To your point, Nicole, because when I niche out and I get into some of these water rebates and I get on galvanized pipe or whatever, like I'm an assistant manager, so my manager would say, let's deal with it when we get there. And I'm trying to, I like to proactively manage. It
Right.
makes it more fun because then I'm not so surprised with all the phone calls I take.
Right. It is. It's a weird role, and often it's a discussion point for me and my team often that, you know, how much are we supplementing? Like, our vendors are very capable. We have amazing partners throughout the industry, all from Northern California all the way down into San Diego. But there's a lot of it that we kind of drive, and they've gotten used to that, right? Like, Nicole's going to tell me what to do on this next walk versus letting them tell me what they're perfectly capable of doing. So it's definitely, I can see when you're dipping, if that clouds kind of that communication piece. But I think that probably because, Tracy, you're a great communicator, that is why you're so valuable, because you're taking technical knowledge and presenting it in a way that's really digestible to your board. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges in the industry, is getting the technical knowledge and the day-to-day knowledge and communicating it in a way that's very consumable for, you know, the decision makers or the people who have the checkbooks. I think it can be, board meetings can be really intense, and you know, irrigation, your best work is buried. You know, no one's coming out to watch it function. And so I think there is like a shroud of mystery about, you know, does it really cost that much, or does it really take that much labor? Especially when it's kind of an invisible component. Like, we only notice it when something's dead.
Yep.
So to be able to communicate that really effectively, I think is a rare skill. So.
Yeah, and I just kind of had an idea with this, is that it's pretty unique that now that there are so many Zoom meetings, that it could be more conducive to having a vendor like Stacey or Richard to come into a board meeting, spend the first 15 minutes justifying the potential expense, and then and then leaving so that discussion can pursue afterwards. Because I think sometimes it's just hard, like putting all the pieces together, getting everyone in the same room, or coordinating a landscape walk, or really prioritizing it. So that might be a new.
I actually have already done that.
Yeah.
I've had landscapers join a Zoom board meeting when it came to some major irrigation issues. I knew I just simply, with that kind of expense, I wasn't the right person to present that to the board. So yeah, it was really easy to get them on a Zoom meeting, and I think it was very helpful. It also helped them hear what the board's, I mean, I can relay what a board direction is, but again, not being a 100% expert on some of the irrigation issues, it was helpful for them to hear the questions directly so they could ask some clarification and follow-ups to make sure that they were able to present the information that the board was looking for. So yeah, that was really helpful. And I would encourage property managers to give it a try. I mean, I know people are probably used to doing, let's do a monthly or quarterly walk with the landscaper. Sometimes when you're looking at a proposal or suggestions or recommendations, yeah, that Zoom meeting format has been very helpful.
Yeah, it's
we've done
technology benefit twice, right?
Yeah.
One from the Zoom meeting, and two, we now have the technology to generate things like water use reports on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, so that meaningful conversations can actually occur. So Nicole, you had a comment?
I was going to say that's so key, because I think some of my more successful board meetings back in the day were when we could bring in either have someone out in the field to see the system run. Nothing's more convincing than watching water run down the road. Or now where we can actually have a video or a report or a graphic that kind of breaks it down in a very understandable way, kind of the impact of poor irrigation management, or kind of even just seeing where the technology is. I think our industry in general kind of suffers from this perception that we're not very technology based. That's just like lawnmowers and blowers. And so it's really cool to be able to present out like, yeah, it's genuine technology. We have computers now, and we can, you know, it's exciting.
I do it from my phone.
Yeah, I can turn it on from my phone. It's amazing. And really getting people excited about the capabilities of the technology, because I think honestly, when they think landscape, they're not thinking like a small laptop computer that runs your water system.
Right.
You know, they just think of a guy again with a hose, like low tech stuff. So it's always exciting to be able to present that.
Yeah. So Stacey, you've had a lot of success, right? We heard low bid earlier. You've had a lot of success in winning jobs, not being low bid. What are some of the ways you've done this? What are some of the ways you've been able to show the value?
Well, and to your point too, I mean, we can still do it a little bit as long as we know exactly what we're doing and do it the right way, and you know, do our estimating correctly. But really it is about getting in front of the people that are making the decision. You know, for anyone that is a contractor and is educated in what needs to be done. If you're not educated, that's fine too. That's why we bring in a lot of our vendors. We brought in Jane, we brought in ET Water to be able to explain to the board exactly what's happening, do the ROI up front, do some mapping of what they could expect, and really showing what that is. And there's some that we've done recently where we've been wanting to convince how important it is for an association to do a fertigation unit throughout the property. Means there's about 8 of them, and it's obviously a large expense, but what does that mean, and why exactly, you know, do they need it? Nowadays with drip irrigation, it's harder to apply fertilizer regularly unless you have something liquid. So the best thing to do is have a fertigation unit. You know, part of the conversation is the soils, what's needed, doing soil testing, and being able to explain that. Even as a contractor, if you can't, bringing in the vendor definitely helps. To the earlier point, it can even save things like gopher issues, you know, whatever you want to put in your fertigation unit. So having somebody to be there and help explain, and obviously being face to face, it's harder nowadays. But even with Zoom meetings, there's a lot of board Zoom meetings now. So that only helps extend the relationship. You know, if you can be there, whether it be in person or face to face this way, it just really helps gain that trust. So like Tracy said earlier, you know, they can't trust people if there's been mistakes or they've had a trail of landscape contractors where they've been, you know, lost their trust that way. So, you know, just having that face-to-face relationship definitely helps build that trust.
Yeah. So thanks, Stacey. So Corrine, you're working with a lot of home builders too. And in California, we're seeing a lot of prescriptive measures for water management, have to install this, that. How are the home developers responding to this? Of course, they're complying, but what's the general sense of how they're feeling about water management and irrigation in Southern California?
You know, for the most part, I think, you know, you mentioned they're embracing it. They don't necessarily have a problem. The one area I do see, and it's a small, it sounds like a small thing, but it can be an area of irritation, is in some of the municipalities that are requiring either a certain spacing or a certain type of plant. You know, they're used to like bringing in the lush rainforest to their marketing models. And so they're looking, when they aren't able to do that as much, like I said, depending on where they're building, they are definitely going to look to go, well, the existing landscaping that's there had better look like first quality, A1, even if it's, you know, just a few plants spread, you know, a foot apart here and there. So I think it does bring their eye a little bit more to the ongoing maintenance, which may be transferred to the HOA while the builder is still there. So bringing in an initial maintenance contractor that kind of understands, even if it's sparse, even if it's drought tolerant, this has to look like I'm selling a home, you know, throughout the community is real important. But I haven't seen too much pushback, just maybe a little grumpiness about, man, I wish it was more like a lush tropical rainforest.
Right. No, that's good insight. Thank you. You know, it's you know, we talk about the changeover and the differences in technology, and we can win a lot of the water management game right in the beginning.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
good to hear. So Nicole, I wanted to ask you, you know, before we get too far into this today, it's obvious that all of you are strong leaders and have excelled in your fields for a while now. Nicole, you're in an industry that's really been male dominated, right? The landscape industry. Yet you have, and I don't mean male dominated from the sense of, I mean it from they've been the majority. So, so help me out here, Nicole. What are some of the things you did to help yourself move and advance in such a positive manner?
You know, I've always found the industry to be very welcoming. Honestly, it's the kind of folks that I've always enjoyed working with. I didn't set out to be a landscaper, but you know, the industry, the people were something that were really positive to me, and I was very lucky enough to have mentors, both male and female, throughout. But I feel like overall the industry responds really well to hard work and positivity, and if you're willing to show up and do the work and treat people with respect and kindness, I think you're going to do really, really well. I've never had an experience where I felt my gender was a detriment in any way. So you know, I've maybe that's me just having had a series of lucky experiences, but it does help to have mentors in the industry. You know, there are definitely hard days, and you know, to have someone keep rooting for you and encouraging you is key, is huge. You know, I try and turn around and do that myself to others, and you know, you have your little networks of people. Like Stacey and I don't talk very often, but you know, it's nice to know that there's other ladies out there that are, you know, living your world, and they're a resource for you. So
That's great to hear, right? The positivity side is huge. This is this can help everybody, right? And I think so long we've seen, you know, back to the Vince Lombardi days of football, right? It's been a lot of negative reinforcement, and I think we see a lot of that, right? And we forget that, you know, anger is a weakness, and we don't really want to do that. We want to try to positively support and show the encouragement. So the same question for you, Stacey. How have you managed to do this?
I agree with Nicole 100%. I mean, maybe that is a little bit different. You know, obviously men and women are a little bit different, and maybe we can bring a little bit of that, you know, softer encouragement, or maybe a little bit of relatedness with the team. But it's really about being thankful for everybody that's a part of your team, and being able to have, you know, patience and acceptance, and work with everybody on your team to teach them, have them teach you. Don't be afraid to learn every day. And, you know, I feel, excuse me, I've come in through some challenges too. But really what it comes down to, like Nicole said, is showing your knowledge. You know, it takes a little bit of a tougher skin in this industry too, I think. Maybe not just against, you know, kind of the male dominated part of it, but just as anyone on this panel knows, just with ownership and boards and how meetings can be. So, you know, making sure that you do have a little bit tougher skin, but proving that you do know and you're willing to work with everybody. You know, I never forget to say thank you every day to everyone on the team that, you know, helps us constantly. I wouldn't be here without the mentors and without the team that, you know, carries everyone. So I feel like that's really important to get through. Even if there's challenges, it's a little bit different, but we still have to work together.
Yeah, well, that's great advice. That's really good to hear. Tracy, how about you? You know, what's kind of been the secret of your success for the past few years?
In terms of property management, I haven't had I would say most of the boards and most of the owners have been male in terms of who I'm communicating with. So, I don't know that gender difference has made a huge difference, but I think it's establishing respect and giving it both ways. And in some cases, I feel like I need to do a better job of demanding it. And I can do that through the way I present information, or maybe the way I proactively manage. And I think that's more of a me thing than it really is based on gender. But when I was in when I was working for the County of San Diego and I was working as a landscape inspector, I was I was just a body there as a consultant to the county. So my role didn't have a lot of weight in terms of like, I didn't have a mentor, I didn't have any staff or anything like that. So when I was in these meetings with like the asphalt contractor who wanted to get his, who wanted to get all the SWIP passed so it needed to be green covered. I mean, they were just waiting for these little seedlings to grow enough so that they could pull all their permits and get out of there. I mean, those meetings were really intense because I kept having to just reinforce like, hey, these are the specifications. This is what's required. This is what we're supposed to see. If we're not seeing it, then we can't, it's not going to pass. And so I had to just really kind of keep going back to the documents. But there was way more emotion and dominant, very dominant emotion and anger, because you're always talking about the bottom line and trying to get out the door with as least problems as possible. And sometimes plants don't grow the way you want. We were always planting California native plants in summertime. And I would go to the pre-con meeting and I would say, half of the plants are going to die. Are you sure you want to stay on schedule? And they would always say, on schedule. And so we would do it. We would plant the plants, the irrigation would be designed fine and it would be operational, and the irrigation would kill the plants. And everybody would wonder what is going on. And then it would extend the planting period at least 3 or 4 months down the road. And it was really painful because I just had to be the person, the cheerleader for the plants, but then also the enforcer of the contract. And a lot of the bigger contractors did not want to hear any of that business.
Yeah, it's hard to be that person, right? But,
yeah.
But needed, so yeah.
Smiling helps, I think. Maybe it's annoying,
Yeah.
you know.
But I think, Tracy, that's an excellent point. Like getting to a point in your career where you're comfortable either influencing peer groups or influencing up is definitely something that comes with time and confidence in your own knowledge and abilities. But it's huge. Being able to come into a room of people from a variety of different backgrounds, may or may not have any education in what you're trying to present to them, and being successful at that is really hard. But it's so key when you do what we do, which is bridge. You know, we're all bridging groups in some way or form, whether we're representing our landscapers or representing our ownership. But being the person in the room who can tie everybody together confidently and earn their trust, it's so hard and it's so underrated, but it's so important.
Yeah.
And maybe that does a better job of answering Robert's question, because he was asking how to retain female team members. Maybe it's reinforcing that that if that person is functioning as a bridge or is bringing a community more together, or somehow being a cohesion, which I feel like I definitely fit that role in a lot of different situations I'm in. Having anyone acknowledge that is really great, because for me, it's maybe more of an innate skill, or it's just a part of something that I do.
Right.
The whole is greater than me.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't necessarily think like, some people even see that that's happening.
They don't. And there's such a traditional, like the more old school fellows that we all probably started with when we were in our teens and 20s, were like, leadership is demonstrated by yelling, by I'm the boss and you're going to listen to me. And, it was very hierarchical and very much a more of an aggressive management role. Like that was just pretty common in the 80s and 90s, right? Like if you were going to be a boss, you needed to act like a boss. I think, I don't know if it's gender specific, but I've been told I'm nurturing, which my team, if they're listening, will laugh because they know that all the time. But I'm like,
I would agree with that.
That's a nice phrase, but it's not a power phrase, right? Like if you were going to think about like executive nurturing is not one of the things that comes up there, but it's always helped me lead a really diverse group of people. And I think, Tracy, when you said greater than the whole, that's a powerful belief system for a leader. And you're right, it's not always celebrated.
No,
Corrine,
it's
how about
not. You have to nurture people and manage people in many different ways. And I think it helps to nurture and support, especially even if we are still talking about, female employees as part of the team. It's kind of intuitive, I guess, as part of our culture growing up that there's less confidence, especially if we do get into somewhat of a male-dominated industry. So some of us do have that, it is more intuitive to be the way we are. Others we have to teach and train. So in nurturing those people, whether they're male or female, that don't have the confidence, again, this is a job, either side of it, where you need tough skin. So being able to nurture those people and help grow the confidence, whether it be by education, standing by their side in board meetings, whatever that may be, to help educate and support. I think that's the biggest thing when we were talking about mentors earlier. If I didn't have somebody that reinforced confidence and stand up for yourself no matter what, I wouldn't be where I would be.
Especially when you're talking about, in the industry, having your bench depth. If you're running a branch or if you're running an organization, you want to know that your new employees are feeling comfortable expressing ideas or being innovators, or they want to take a training, or they want to express themselves. And if there's not an environment where they feel comfortable in doing that, you're missing out on talent.
Yeah, definitely support all that. One thing I found too, just to add on that, as far as adding females to your team, one thing I used to do when I would go back home every time is go back to my high school horticulture class and speak with students. Not only is it good to keep recruiting people into my side of the industry for landscape contractors, but just as general to find more women in the industry. Over the 25 plus years that I've been in it, there's been growth, but not a ton. And so it's, we need to start from high school level, college level too, to make sure that we're adding the right people and training, some all-stars to take over after us.
A lot of people don't know our industry has a career path.
Right.
I remember, I don't know if y'all know Rhonda Wood. She's the arborist manager at Disneyland, or urban forester at Disneyland. And we went to the OC Fair. I want to say it was about 2 years ago. And you know how you walk through the fair and there's like the fancy chickens and the rabbits and stuff. And you get in the back where they have the giant zucchinis and stuff. They had this big mural on the wall, and it was like jobs in horticulture. And we're like, this is amazing. And we went and looked at it, and it was a picture of like the lady from Armstrong Gardens, like with the big sun hat and a shovel. And it was like, gardeners can make
Collecting zucchini.
Yeah, and it was just, it didn't list arboriculture, it didn't list irrigation, it didn't list any management role at all. It was like, gardeners can make up to $30,000 a year. And I was so mad, you guys. I was like, this is the worst perception ever of our industry, because I think there's, amazing opportunities on both sides, either in the management side or on the landscape side. And I'm really passionate about it, but I think we have like an image problem as far as recruiting. And so
Definitely.
Stacey to go back to her high school and say, here's my job, here's what I make, here's why I'm passionate about it is huge, because now they're connecting it to someone.
Right.
Yeah, and it's such a nice industry too, right? We all know each other. We all return calls. We all get along, and we're all pulling for the same thing. So, yeah. So, and I just want to mention, because our audience couldn't see that gentleman Robert had asked a question about how to attract, hire, retain, and train female employees for his landscaping company, and that's kind of where we were going. So I have one last question for you guys today, and I mean, this has been so interesting and illuminating. I hope that you'll all come back again in a couple months, because we've just scratched the surface. But Corrine, for women looking to get into your industry and wanting to develop, what advice do you have for them?
Well, and it kind of reiterates some of the things that the ladies have already said is, again, this may not be a gender thing, this might be a personal thing, but lead with competence. Make sure that you aren't afraid of hard work, and find the right opportunities to display your competence, because no one's going to come looking for it. You have to show that's who you are, that's what you know. And if you wait on the sidelines for someone to notice your competence, you might be waiting longer than you'd like. So look for those opportunities where, hey, there's someone mentions a project that they want to work on, either for the company or for a client. Volunteer for that if obviously that's in your wheelhouse. Always take an opportunity to learn. because that might then open the door for that experience of, hey, I remember learning something about this type of project. I want to be a part of it. Even just wanting to be a part of different types of teams work. But, you know, nothing works like being an expert. And as Nicole mentioned, that takes time. So yeah, you got to put in the time, but mentors are important, as they all said. I think it sounds like everyone on the panel has an opportunity to have a good mentor. So don't actually even be afraid to go to someone that you really respect, whether it's in your company, in your industry, and simply ask, I really respect, you know, your role and the way you approach it. You know, I really feel like I could learn a lot from you. I mean, straight up ask, would you be my mentor? The worst thing that they're going to say is no. That hurts nobody. You move on. So you have to be a little bold, focus on competence, and try to find something you really like. You're not going to like every day. I don't think. Maybe some people are lucky enough to find work that they like every day. But you're definitely going to find more interest and get that level of competence and experience if there's something about your position you enjoy. I stumbled into my position and found that I enjoyed it. So sometimes it comes from different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. Nicole, what about you?
A lot of the same. I too stumbled into my role. I was dragged in on some of my roles. I was pushed into roles I didn't think I was ready for yet. I went to interviews where I felt I was grossly unqualified and got the job, just because, you know, confidence grows as you keep hearing yeses. It's such a great industry. Weekly, I will reach out to strangers because something they're doing is interesting to me, and I will tell them, university professors or presidents of companies, and say, hey, I'm really interested. You have 10 minutes. And for the most part, 90% of them are very gracious with their time and their interest level. And so I would hope somebody who is interested in any of our roles would feel either comfortable reaching out to me directly or reaching out to someone that, like you said, catches their interest and say, I would like to talk to you. I want to know. And I'll be honest, I'll talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. It's not always perfect, but it is a role that I absolutely love. So I would want that for more people. I would love to have more people come into the industry with that passion and that drive. And it's not just for people who started out in the industry either. Like I've known people, amazing people. I'm thinking of my Frankie Juarez, if he's on the line, who came from retail. He worked at a Best Buy and was one of my best account managers. He was really committed to learning it and loving it. And so even if you're not in the industry, but you think you might like it, come and talk to somebody and show some passion.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I'm sure people appreciate the honesty too of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So thanks, Nicole. Tracy, any last thoughts or advice from you?
Well, I just saw the 2 questions, and one was, how do you put your foot down when a staff member takes advantage of your kindness, either because you're a woman or because you're inherently compassionate, and try to give people the benefit of the doubt? One thing I am completely practicing, because property management is one of those jobs where you have all the balls in the air, and I imagine landscape maintenance to be the same. And contracting, because there's just so many things to track and so many timelines and so many people you're connected with. Anyways, is to focus on the things that I am doing. So if I get met with, hey, you haven't done this, or they're asking me to do something for them that I don't have time for, then I can say, like, this is what I'm focused on. I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, because that elevates my confidence to know that I am busy and I'm working on the thing that's the most important. And then it reassures them, particularly when I'm working with a board and they say, like, why haven't you done this or this or this? I'm like, because we're installing your entire HVAC system. I'm kind of busy right now. So not as an excuse, but just as a comment. And I think that that's a very effective, because everybody wants more from you. And the more you say yes, if that's like what you're considering kindness, the more overwhelmed you can get. And I'm guilty of all of it.
Yeah, and it's prioritization, right? You're demonstrating prioritization.
Yeah, for sure.
And right, when I teach, I say, it's okay to say yes, but it's okay to say yes, but I'm going to do these other things first. So I might not get to that for a few days. Is that okay, or do you need to find somebody else? And so thanks, Tracy.
Yeah.
So, and Stacey, any last advice you might have for people trying to get into our industry? And
not much to add on. I mean, great comments. I agree 100% with all of them. I think the knowledge, the respect, the confidence are high on the list. Again, be thankful for everybody that surrounds you and is part of your team, has mentored you, helps educate you. Create those relationships that are strong. And, this is any time in life. Keep nurturing those relationships that are strong and minimize those that don't. Surround yourself with, educated people, and that will help, reinforce good relationships. And again, it just kind of on my thing, it sounds kind of small, but speaking Spanish helped me a lot. I'll be honest. I learned it in high school, college. I learned it out on the field when I was in a mow crew. It's one thing that you can do to really gain respect from those that kind of might say, oh, who's this chick coming in telling us what to do? Whether it be part of your team or anyone else. I mean, I'll be honest, it happens. So anything that can help gain your confidence or help the respect of whoever that you're working alongside, I think just will really help. So.
yeah, what great advice, right? We talked earlier, communication was the key, right? So communicating with somebody in their language, even better. That's great. So you guys, I was really excited for today for a while, and you guys really have exceeded my expectations, and they were very high. I really want to say thank you to all of you for joining us and presenting this Lunch and Learn for this past hour. You guys were just great. I really meant it when I said I really want to have you back in a month or two and revisit some of the questions we didn't get to. But again, thank you to all our panelists, and thank you to the viewers. I really appreciate you, of course. Everybody have a great weekend, and stay safe out there, okay?
Thank
Bye
you
now.
for having us,
Bye,
Richard.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.